So, how do you take something real like football and put it into terms, in mathematical terms, in algebra? First, you've got to figure out what it is you're going to quantify. And for our kids, we were going to figure out how do we evaluate a team's efficiency. Now, in football, you have to score points to win. In order to do that, you have to gain yards on the field. So quickly, we came up with yards divided by points would determine efficiency. The yards you earn divided by the points you score. And this was great because you could tangibly see that if you won a game and you had 500 yards on the field and you scored 20 points, you could get your rating of 25. If you lost the game and you only got 100 yards but you scored 5 points, you got an efficiency rating of 20. The lower the rating, the more efficient your team is. So that worked. Then we looked at turnovers. Because the entire football field was worth up to 100 yards, that you can go from end to end, we then decided that turnovers had to be worth 100 yards. And how did we use it? Initially, students said yards minus 100 points per turnover over points. We ran with it. We started figuring it out, plugging in numbers from the first week's games. And we started to see that teams that had more turnovers ended up being more efficient than teams that had fewer turnovers, which did not make sense. So another student said, let's add the yards for turnovers to the total yards. So we changed it and we came up with yards plus 100t, 100 points for every turnover, divided by points. And that worked. We tested it and it was great. So what does it actually look like was this. We looked at Green Bay versus Chicago week 1. Green Bay had 214 yards of offense. They had no turnovers. And they scored 10 points. That gave them a total of 214 yards divided by 10. Their efficiency rating was 21.4 yards per point. That was our generated term. Chicago, on the other hand, Chicago had 254 yards plus 1 turnover. They had an interception. Sorry, that's 100t, which was 1. And they scored 3 points. So they ended up with 354 yards divided by 3, which gave them an efficiency rating of 118 yards per point. That made sense. They scored fewer points. They had a turnover. Their rating should be worse than that of Green Bay. When we checked everything else, it worked, and that was how we came up with our expression.